So how often have you found yourself watching YouTubers creating the most beautiful aquariums only to discover they've spent hundreds if not thousands of dollars setting it up? In this video, I want to show how easy it is to set up a low budget, low tech aquarium for shrimp and fish to live in. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Richard and I'm a fish and shrimp breeder based in the UK. Now the aquarium I'm using here holds approximately 16 gallons, which is about 65 litres of water. It's approximately 2 feet long, about a foot wide and just over 1 foot deep. Now here for substrate, I'm just using regular gravel. This is some gravel I'd saved from a breeding tank when I broke that down. I know so often we're bombarded with videos of people using fluval stratum or another fabulous high-tech expensive substrate, but the reality is, as fabulous as those substrates are, shrimp are absolutely fine with just good old-fashioned gravel. Whilst I am going to be adding plants to this tank, I'm not going to the trouble of adding any dirt or other fertilizers underneath the gravel. The plants I'm going to put in here are easy to grow plants that will be happy with just some fertilizer added to the water column. I am going to bank the gravel slightly towards the back because I'm going to plant at the back rather than at the front, so the gravel doesn't need to be especially deep at the front. Once the gravel's in, it's time to start adding the rocks. Now these are again just rocks that I've had in other aquariums, and when I break down my tanks I just store them all in a huge box and then rummage through when I'm setting up the next tank. Truth be told, I'm not massively au fait on all the different types of rock. I don't know what type of rock these are, but I've used them in a number of tanks and they always look good. Most importantly, these rocks don't affect the water chemistry at all. They're not going to raise or lower the pH. They're not going to interfere with my water parameters in the slightest, and that's important to me. I don't want the water spiking or the pH suddenly going up. Now let me be the first to say, I'm no world-class aquascaper. If you're looking for one of those fabulous aquariums that you can only ever dream of, then you need to check out George Farmer or MD Fish Tanks or some of the work by the late great Takeshi Amano. I tend to build tanks that I like the look of and tanks that work well for the shrimp and the fish. My priority is always the inhabitants rather than how amazing the aquarium looks when I've finished setting it up. Now you may notice I'm adding rather a lot of rocks here, and that's because when this tank is finished, it's not only going to house shrimp, but it's going to be a community tank that also houses fish. Shrimp and fish can get on fabulously together, but you have to provide ample hiding places so the shrimp can get away from the fish. If we keep shrimp and fish in the same tank with barely any decorations, the fish will eventually pick off all the shrimp. The aim of the tank I'm trying to set up here is to provide maximum hiding spaces for the shrimp, to give them the best chance of surviving and to allow the colony to grow even though they're being kept with fish. Once I'm happy with the rock work, it's time to add some plants. To continue with our low budget theme, I've actually taken these plants from another tank that I keep, from my 155 gallon Tetra tank. I'm just using the one plant type here, which is Cryptocoryne Wendetii Green. I love this plant, and I love it because A, it's super easy to grow, and B, it just spreads like billy-o. So I'm going to put probably 6 or 8 plants in this tank, and in 6 months time I'll be having to remove it and thin it out. The reason I love that so much is when I thin it out I can just use it for my next tank. I can add it into another tank. I've got this plant in almost every single one of my aquariums, and the truth be told, about 5 years ago I started with a single specimen, and every single plant I have is an offshoot of that original plant. When I removed these plants from my 155 gallon tank, I've just trimmed the roots slightly to make planting easier. Cryptocoryne plants are incredibly hardy and they don't mind having their roots trimmed back a touch before planting. Now one slight quirk of these plants, which are also often referred to as crypts, is something called crypt melt, and that is when you add these plants to your tank, sometimes all of the foliage dies off. But this is temporary and the plant will quickly shoot new growth and new fresh green leaves will be up before you know it. If you purchase some crypts from your local store and add them to your tank and all the foliage dies off, just give them a couple of weeks and you'll soon start to see the shoots of new growth. Now, as mentioned previously, the aim here is not to create a fabulous aquascaped tank. The plants are purely there, A, to process waste from the fish, because live plants do a great job of processing fish waste, but mainly to provide cover for the shrimp. So I'm just planting all along the back here, and eventually in a few months' time, that'll be a thick mass of leaves where the shrimp can happily spend their days safely away from hungry predatory fish.
I'm sorry to interrupt the video, but I need to ask a small favour. Last month, only 25% of the people who watch my videos subscribed to the channel. Now, not only does each new subscriber mean a great deal to me personally, but the larger I can build this channel, the more interesting, educational and entertaining videos I can make for you. So if you found value in this video so far, please take a moment to tap the subscribe button. I'll let you get back to your video.
So once I'm happy with the plants, it's time to fill up the aquarium. So I'm just filling this tank straight up off my mains. One thing unfortunately during this video is the mains water is incredibly cold as it's currently winter, but my room is warm, and therefore during the making of this video I do get a lot of condensation forming on the glass, but I'll try and keep wiping it away for you. In keeping with our low-tech theme, I'm just putting a simple sponge filter. Now, many people will be surprised how many shrimp and fish I'll end up keeping in this small tank just running it from a sponge filter. But I believe many of us end up over-filtering our aquariums, and we can in fact get away with far less filtration than we think. I have spoken many times about how, in my opinion, we don't actually need to heat our shrimp tanks. Red cherry shrimp are phenomenally hardy and will happily survive in water which is just room temperature. But in this tank I am going to be adding some tropical fish, so I may as well start off with the water set to the correct temperature. So essentially that's my full low-tech, low-budget shrimp tank setup. Now I'm fairly sure many of you will be surprised when you learn how many red cherry shrimp I'm planning on keeping in here. And then even more surprised when you discover my choice of fish. But my aim on this channel is always to show people what can be done. It may not be what you would choose to do, but at least it helps show you what is possible. And I do think in fish and shrimp keeping, pretty much anything is possible if you set the environment up in the right way. I'm going to leave this tank now for a couple of 3 weeks to mature. I will be adding some fertiliser for the plants, and I will be adding a couple of small pinches of fish food just to get the nitrogen cycle kick-started and get the bacteria into the sponges. The plants I'm using have been removed from another tank, so they will already be covered in beneficial bacteria, and that bacteria will quickly begin to colonise the sponge filter, as well as the rocks and the glass and the gravel. So after I'd finished filming this video, I sat back and looked at the tank, and I decided it needed a little something extra. So I took 2 small pieces of the same rock, and I used some cyanoacrylate superglue gel to stick a small clump of Java moss to each. Java moss is incredibly beneficial in a shrimp tank, especially for baby shrimp. Now this is only small clumps of Java moss at the moment, but these 2 small clumps will grow fairly rapidly and will quickly form thick, dense clumps that will provide the perfect hiding places for baby shrimp. So if you want to see how this tank gets on and be amazed at just how many red cherry shrimp I put in here and which fish I decide to keep with them, then do subscribe to the channel and I'll keep you updated all the way. In the meantime, I'll link on screen to another video you might enjoy. Thanks for watching.